popular narrative of video game history goes something like this. In 1977, Atari brought out the 2600 and games came into the home. However, in 1983, the market failed due to how bad the game E.T. was. Fortunately, Nintendo saved video games in 1985 with the NES by regulating publishers. In the late 1980s and early 90s, the Sega Genesis challenged the NES, overtaking Nintendo in sales. The Super Nintendo allowed Nintendo to claw back market share and beat Sega in sales by the end of the generation. So, what is wrong about that history? Seems pretty clear and concise, right? Well, there are many major inaccuracies, but that isn't really the issue here. The issue is that this is the story, not of video games, but of the American video game market. In the UK, my home country, for instance, not only did the video game crash not happen, almost all of the aforementioned history didn't occur at all. I'll start by giving a more accurate version, then explain why this is an issue. The UK history of video games started more in the early 80s than the 70s. The 2600 had not made much of an impression in the UK market, nor had its competitors, such as the Intellivision. So instead, it was the turn of the microcomputer to have a go. Between 1980 and 1985, many highly successful computers came out, such as the BBC Micro, the Amstrad CPC, the Acorn Electron, and the Sinclair Spectrum. The UK had the highest percentage of home computer ownership in the world throughout the mid-80s. Furthermore, almost all schools had got computers, so nearly everyone came into contact with computers on a somewhat regular basis. Computer gaming was a huge pastime. All of these systems were less powerful than the NES, so obviously that is where the histories unite and people switch to the NES. Except they didn't. In the UK, games cost £70 each, or over £200, $260 today. Compare this to home computer games as low as £2. The NES hadn't a hope and failed completely. Instead, a new challenger to the market stepped up. The Sega Master System was even more powerful than the NES, and the games were much more affordable at £25, which is more like today's £60 console releases. This system bit heavily into the UK budget market, along with 16-bit computers, principally the Amiga and Atari ST. These were much more expensive, but also more advanced, about on par with a Super Nintendo or Mega Drive. So, for all of you Nintendo lovers, the NES probably held back the progress of gaming by holding back superior platforms with Nintendo's restrictive licensing policies and the misleadingly low price of the hardware. Anyway, cue the 16-bit consoles. Once again, Sega absolutely smashed Nintendo with their Mega Drive, Genesis for you Yanks. The SNES did fare considerably better than the NES though. And that is where I end, but just think, that's just the UK. Although many areas can be generally categorised, each nation has its own history. For example, the SECAM TV system in France, which is incompatible with the European standard PAL. This caused many unexpected products to rise to prominence, such as the Amstrad CPC with its bundled monitor, because they were the best of the few systems that worked there. Or Japan, with its MSX computers, lack of competition to Nintendo till the PlayStation, and more recently the practical non-existence of the Xbox in the area. So why does this affect anything? Because popular culture is transitioning to only remembering the American side. On YouTube, US retro game personalities, such as the Angry Video Game Nerd, are orders of magnitude more popular than non-US personalities, such as Nostalgia Nerd. I am not bashing either side, I enjoy both. However, it is undeniable that many people with a passing knowledge of gaming just know the American side of the story. Over time, the American history is becoming the history in the public eye. The amount of fake nostalgia in the UK for the NES Mini, born of a system that failed in the country, is ridiculous. Over time, history is being distorted, and each nation's individual story is being forgotten.